everyone. My name is Julie, and I organize webinars for the Clare Booth Luce Center for Conservative Women. I am so happy for you to join us this afternoon with our guest speaker, Senator Marsha Blackburn. Here at the Center, our mission is to prepare women for effective leadership and to promote leading conservative women. Our materials, programs, and initiatives support ideas and efforts that are pro-America, pro-family, and support free enterprise. We encourage our supporters and students to be active ambassadors of conservative philosophy in their schools, workplaces, and communities. If you are interested in learning more about the Center for Conservative Women, I invite you to visit our website at cblwomen.org and follow us on our social media platforms. Joining me today is Michelle Easton, the president of our organization. Michelle founded the Center for Conservative Women 27 years ago. Prior to that, she was appointed to positions in both the Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush presidential administrations. She was president of the Virginia State Board of Education for Governor George Allen and has a law degree from American University. Michelle has been married for 47 years and has 3 grown sons.
It's such a pleasure for me to introduce our favorite elected official here in Washington, D.C., Senator Marsha Blackburn. Elected in Tennessee in 2018, the first woman to represent the volunteer state in the United States Senate. Before her election to the Senate, Senator Blackburn represented Tennessee's 7th congressional district in the U.S. House of Representatives, where she was a leader in the fight for a small, efficient federal government that's accountable to its citizens. Senator Blackburn has been such a friend to the ladies here at the Clare Booth Luce Center for Conservative Women. She has spoken to many of our gatherings of high school and college women at our summits around the country, and is an outstanding role model, inspiring our young ladies to be strong, smart, and gracious conservative leaders like she is. She's repeatedly graced the pages of our Great American Conservative Women calendar. Here's this year's 2021. And her comment, look at the beautiful picture that we have of her this year. Her comment on the theme of the calendar this year, which is American Exceptionalism. She said, quote, "America is the world's last brightest shining city on a hill, and it is her people who ensure the fires stay lit," unquote. Words that mean all the more in this tumultuous time in our country's history. Senator Blackburn was awarded the Luce Center's 2018 Woman of the Year Award, given each year to the woman who has done the most outstanding work to advance conservative ideas. And her new book, I love her new book, called The Mind of a Conservative Woman, is rich and inspiring. My favorite story from her life is that to avoid taking out loans to pay for her college at Mississippi State University, she persuaded the Southwestern Company to allow her to be the first woman ever to have a job with them selling books door to door, as she had seen her brother do previously. I've read her excellent book. I agree with it, and I've enjoyed it so much that I'm buying it as a Christmas gift for several of my family. Her focus is to promote opportunities for women and to make America a more prosperous place to live, with her leadership philosophy based on her experience in the private sector as a small businesswoman, as an author, as a wife, a mother, and a grandmother. Please join me now in welcoming the Clare Booth Luce Center for Conservative Women's favorite elected official, Senator Marsha Blackburn.
Oh, Michelle, thank you so much. I am absolutely thrilled to join you all for a few minutes on what is a very busy time in Washington, D.C. So thank you all so much. It is always a pleasure to work with Clare Booth Luce and to work specifically on helping to encourage young women to step up and lead and to use their talents. And I just appreciate the consistent and persistent support that they give to female elected officials, to young women. So thank you all for caring enough about our nation and our nation's future to be a part of this today. You know, one of the things that has impressed me is the number of young women who will come up to me when I'm out and about, and they will say, you know, I'm really worried about what's happening with the Constitution, with the rule of law. I'm worried about where we're going to go with our freedoms. I want to make certain that we protect our freedoms. And I say the best way to talk about all of that is what I call the big five: faith, family, freedom, hope, and opportunity. So today, I think we're going to spend a little bit of time and we're going to look at that. And I want us to focus on where we have been throughout society, where we are right now, and then where we're going to be heading. And when you all step up to take the lead, kind of what's in front of you. So let's get going on that, because we want to get to your questions before we finish all of this out. First of all, we as conservative women have quite a heritage when it comes to stepping up, taking leadership, working to free people, standing for liberty and justice. And I like to go back and look at the Old Testament. Deborah was a judge. As a matter of fact, the only female judge who is mentioned in the Bible. And Deborah came forward to lead Israel, to lead the army to victory. And Deborah said, when she had that victory, that while the victory was theirs, the glory was God's. She was a leader who didn't mince words and who didn't back down. You also have Esther, who came from a distant land. She was basically in hiding, was elevated to become queen. And she taught us a lot about building relationships and really building organizations. You also can look at Mary. And I have to tell you, one of my favorite cartoons is one where you have Mary and the women at the tomb, and then they're being approached by a group of men. And the women say, this is what has transpired and this is what we've done. And the men say, well, don't worry about it. We'll take it from here. But of course, in history, in the Bible, the attribution goes to Mary. You also have Queen Isabella, who, when King Ferdinand said he was not going to fund Christopher Columbus's work to try to find this new world out across the ocean, she stepped up. And again, just as with Deborah, just as with Esther, just as with the women at the tomb, you have a brave woman who made her imprint and helped change history. You also have women from our founding. Abigail Adams, her instruction to her husband. You have Deborah Champion. You have the suffragist who fought for 72 years to get the right to vote. And we just celebrated that 100-year anniversary. But you think of these wonderful women like Susan B. Anthony, like Ida B. Wells, like Ann Dallas Dudley, Carrie Chapman Catt. These conservative women who believed in equality and justice stepped forward and changed, once again, our nation's history. And then, of course, you have women that are serving today, and we are so grateful that Clare Boothe Luce keeps the attention not only on our history and celebrates that, but also on where we have come to. Now, before we leave our history lesson, I want to walk us back through the history of conservatism. These conservative women that I have mentioned, how was it that they gained their strength? What were some of the values that were important to them as they walked through their period of history? And Michelle mentioned the book that I have out now on conservative women and how conservative women are treated in the media. But I want to walk back through a chapter in that book where we talk about this history. You can go back into the 12 tribes of Israel, and that is where we gain our history of and our basis for federalism. Every tribe had things they were responsible for in and of themselves, but then they also shared certain responsibilities for the nation of Israel. Then, of course, you look at Jerusalem, where we get the Judeo-Christian ethic. We get our love of philosophy, and those underpinnings come to us from the Greeks. Our law comes to us from the Romans. Our form of government comes to us from London. Our founding documents from Philadelphia. And each of these is built on some of those precedents that came before it, from federalism to the Judeo-Christian ethic, to the philosophies that underpin us, the law that binds us, the government form that allows our forms of expression, and then our constitutional underpinnings, which have enabled this nation to be the most free and democratic nation ever. A nation that works for freedom for all people, not going and taking people's lands or taking over their country, but freeing people to be able to have the lives that they desire. So we can't know who we are or where we're going until we appreciate this history. And I really appreciate how Russell Kirk, a great conservative writer, laid out some of the premises that come from each of those times and cities that I've just gone over with you. And I would commend his writings to you. I would also commend the writings of Edmund Burke, who was a true conservative and wrote so much during the French Revolution, looked at the French Revolution, the impact there, and what was happening with America. And then, of course, you have writings by William F. Buckley that help to inform us and to build out our understanding of our constitutionalism, of our respect for the rule of law, of our love and appreciation for conservatism, which enables us to stand on our founding documents. So we know that understanding where we are leads us to what has happened today. Now, I will tell you, I think this is a great time to be a conservative woman. And when you look at what has transpired this year, from the confirmation of Justice Amy Coney Barrett, and then into the political races, the American public is listening to what conservative women are saying, and hundreds of thousands, millions of them have responded to the message that conservative women have carried into campaigns. Right now, 25% of all elected officials are female. 700 of those at your state and federal level are Republican women. They are conservatives. And this is a very exciting time to see conservative women stepping up and taking the lead. Now, there are a lot of reasons that have been tossed around as to why conservative women were listened to in this election cycle. I've heard everything from, well, it's because of COVID, or, well, it's because people were paying more attention to candidates, even to things, and I think this really has something to do with it. Women have grown truly ill and fatigued with listening to some of the rantings of the left and their definition of what should be important to women and to their agenda. And the way they operate is this. They expect all women to vote as a monolithic block. They expect all women to submit to the leftist agenda and to give their allegiance to that leftist agenda for women. And basically, they say, if you're a free-thinking, independent woman, we don't want to hear from you. If you are pro-life, pro-family, pro-religion, pro-business, pro-military, we don't want to hear from you. We want you to be in lockstep with our agenda. If not, we don't have a place at the table for you. But conservative women are stepping up and saying, hey, wait a minute. I don't agree with what you're saying. The economy is a women's issue. The safety and security of my neighborhood, that is an issue for women. So is school choice. So is making certain that we have retirement security. So is healthcare security. And what the media is beginning to hear, they haven't admitted it yet, but I know they're hearing it, is that these issues of the economy, of safety, of security, of school choice, of healthcare options, these are issues that women care about and women want to hear about. And we know that the left would rather have women say, we're going to give the power to government and let government make the decisions for us. You know, kind of like that Life of Julia cartoon that ran during the Obama presidential race, where Julia, as a 3-year-old, we see her, she goes to Head Start and then to schools that are public schools, and then she gets a loan to go to college, and then she goes to work for a government agency, and she has a child, and there is no mention of parents or friends or other affiliations, just the role of the federal government making decisions. And I will tell you, that is not something that women want. So when you look at where we are today, and you say conservative women get pushed to the side, but people are beginning to listen to the message of conservative women. And they are beginning to shift their focus and say, no, I agree with what she is saying. And I want to know more. I want to help you all reach out and communicate that message. So there are 4 things that I want you to do and not be shy about doing. I want you to engage people. I want you to elevate the conversations that you have with these individuals. I want you to embrace them and encourage them. So let's talk about these. Sometimes it's hard to have those conversations with somebody who has chosen intellectual isolation. And they choose intellectual isolation on the left because it's easier, because they make their point, their minds are made up, they're sticking to it. And every time I talk to a group of college women, I hear about this. They get frustrated by professors that do not want robust, respectful discussion, that do not want the point and the counterpoint. So what we have to do is learn how to engage and say to somebody, you know, what you say could be true, but it could also not be true. Now, here is what I believe. You believe that. I believe this. So let's talk about this. And I will encourage you to remind them that freedom, our nation, has been well served by robust, respectful, bipartisan debate, by having a point and a counterpoint, and by hearing people out on an issue. And many times the left will refuse to engage, and you have no better example of this than the hearings with Justice Barrett. Indeed, when I wrapped up the hearing for the Republican side of the aisle, I talked about one of my favorite songs that was written by a Nashville songwriter that I had the opportunity to get to know. His name was Eddie Arnold. And this beautiful song, this syrupy love song, You Don't Know Me, is one that he was known for. And this song has been recorded time and again, going from Eddie Arnold to Michael Bublé. And I had asked Eddie where the song, the genesis of the song came from one time. And he said, you know, sometimes there are people in our pathway that we just don't take the time to get to know. And if we did, it would be a great relationship. And I said, that's what the left chose to do with Justice Barrett, not to get to know her. We had Democrats that would not even hold a meeting with her. They just refused. They chose intellectual isolation because they would not engage. So the way to engage people is to prompt a question. And Michelle mentioned what that I've written about some of these ways to engage and to bring people in. Let's say this, let's say the issue is life. And somebody's saying, well, I don't think the government or anybody else should tell a woman what to do with her body. Well, the government ought not to be telling someone what to do with their body. But what about a government policy that leads to 1,700 people in this country losing their life every single day? 1,700 because of a government policy. Don't you think that that is something that should be discussed on the nightly news? Shouldn't we talk about that policy? Because you've got 1,700 lives that are lost every day on that policy. When it comes to the issue of immigration and children at the border, and you will hear someone say, oh, these children should not be separated from their parents at the border. Maybe it's appropriate to say, you know, sometimes they have to separate the child from the adult that they're with to be certain that that adult is a family member. Because in 2019, over 25% of all the children brought to the border by an adult, the adult turned out not to be related to that child. So in order to protect that child, in order to prevent human trafficking, in order to see that child returned to their family, you do have to separate. You do have to do a DNA test. You do have to find out what the relationship is with that adult and child, and you have to make certain that that child is protected. So sometimes just engaging them and asking that question is the way to get things started. And it's also how you elevate the conversation. So that as you elevate the conversation by asking a question, then what you're able to do is to say, well, what if other components turned out to be true or not true? And then what you have done is elevate this to a policy debate, so that you hear this range of voices in this discussion, and it's not just one person who is making a statement, and if you do not ascribe to that statement, you're not let into that discussion, which is not a discussion, it's just a recitation of what they believe to be true. So engage them, and by engaging them, elevate that discussion so that you hear a range of voices and you put different considerations on the table. Then embrace them. Encourage them to come back to you with another discussion. Embrace them. This was so productive. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me. Thank you for sharing your opinion with me. Encourage them then to continue their friendship, that relationship, that association with you, to have that debate and to have the discussion, a fruitful, productive discussion on the issues. And what we know is you're not going to change minds, and you're not going to win if you are willing to sit silent. And it is some of these mundane tasks, if you will, that will lead you to a magnificent realm of and a sphere of influence that includes your Republicans and Democrats and independents and libertarians, so that you build out your sphere of influence. So Michelle, thank you all for letting me join you today, and I think we've got some questions and I'll be happy to take them.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much, Senator. We already have plenty of questions. Let's go with first. How can we as young women strengthen our skills to become better, happy warriors as more people pay attention to conservative women?
And strengthening the skills is the right place to start. And the way you strengthen those skills so that you are the happy warrior, you are the one that is embracing all of these different political perspectives to engage in a conversation with you. The way you do that is to raise your hand and volunteer in your clubs and organizations right now. Volunteer at work. Take on a task. Learn how to lead a team. Learn how to organize your thoughts around making an argument. But as I said, you cannot sit silent. Another thing to bear in mind, the skills that you develop are a transferable commodity. Those skills that you're going to learn in school, in organizations, at work, you can carry those forward into the public space to make a difference in public policy.
Thank you. Another question is, what is your advice for more reserved girls? How do we get our voices heard if we're a little bit quieter or more introverted?
Yes, and this is something that you kind of have to train yourself to do. I say the first thing to do is to listen well. And it was something I had to learn because I am naturally more reserved. So by listening well, I found the right questions to ask. And remember, Margaret Thatcher would say, people are known less by what they say and more by the questions that they ask. So listen well, know that you're asking good questions, and then always have a good retort. This comes from knowing your history. That is why I think it is so important for conservative women to know their history and to read these books that will underpin you so that you understand you are solid and resolute in what you believe.
Thank you. What positions of leadership do you think more women should aim for? Where is there a lacking of strong conservative leadership from women?
If you look at local, state, and federal elected officials, we need more women at every single level. Now, as I said in my remarks, we have more conservative women serving now than ever. And that's a very good thing. And bear in mind, this is the era of the conservative woman. We just made history with a number of Republican women that were elected in this election cycle, whether it's at the state level or the federal level. So people are listening. I honestly believe that after the decades of this national organization for women and spouting out some of the things that they say, that we know that women are beginning to say, there's got to be a better way than this. I'm not in total agreement with them, and if I don't agree with them in total, they're going to cancel me out. So I'm looking for somebody that I can agree with 70%, 80% of the time, but not be in lockstep with them.
Thank you. What advice do you have for standing strong under fire, especially when you're being faced by harassment from outspoken young liberal women who you thought were your friends?
The way to do that is to just say, look, I'm not here to argue with you. I don't want to argue with you, but I would love to have a discussion with you. You know, if I listen to you and you listen to me, we might actually change one another's mind on a couple of points. So are you willing to listen? Are you willing to have a discussion?
It's a very good challenge for some of the young liberal women, I think.
Yes.
Given the tough political climate in Hollywood and just what we consume in media regarding politics and other topics, how do you think we should strategize our consumption of media, given that often conservative ideas are mocked and devalued in this process?
Oh, and you're so right about that. You know, there are so many times a request to appear on a show will come in and we will decline the request because we know that they are inviting me because they want to mock conservative women. And it is important for us to be out there in the public space, to be well prepared when we are out there in the public space, and then to find those openings to speak up. I had really good advice from my older brother at one point when I was starting into selling books with Southwestern and building my organization and beginning to lead people. And by the way, you manage assets and you lead people. And don't forget that. But he said, as you're leading people, pick your battles wisely. Choose your words wisely. So you don't have to speak up on everything, and you certainly don't want to speak up on everything. But when you choose those words and decide to engage, make certain that you are well prepared for it.
Thank you. So there's a few questions that are more curiosity based. Says, out of curiosity, is there a respectful bipartisan conversation that happens on the Hill? What is it like being a senator or a congresswoman and having those discussions, but at that level?
Right. We do have respectful conversations, and we're finishing work on the National Defense Authorization Act, and I'll be going to vote on that tomorrow. And yes, you find a way to work with people for the good of the country.
Thank you. Someone along those lines of what you've been discussing would like to know if you would consider running for president in the future.
I don't intend to run for president. I love being the senator from Tennessee, and I expect that's the job I'm going to continue to fill.
Thank you. We have a lot of fans who are requesting that just for your notebook. So someone would like to know, it's clear that conservative viewpoints are being censored on most social media platforms. Can you explain your work as the chair of the Big Tech Task Force, and how do we address it based on your experience?
Yes, I would love to, and I've got to leave from this and head to a meeting on this very issue. But yes, that is the reforms of Section 230, and we want to reform it, not to eliminate it. Big Tech would love to eliminate liability protections because they have a lot of lawyers, they can defend themselves. But we have new entrants into the edge providers and social media, outlets like Parler or Bing or Duck for search engines, and they need those liability safe harbor provisions. So that is what we need to do, and we're continuing to work on that, and also on online privacy so that you, the online consumer, own your virtual you.
That sounds wonderful. Well, Senator, we don't want to monopolize more of your time, but we truly appreciate your talking to us and giving us this advice. We really respect you and honor you here, and we appreciate you taking the time today from your
I
schedule.
am delighted to be with you today, and I wish everyone a joyous, happy holiday season.